we have seen China continue to offload their US Treasury holdings at the same time where really the fiscal challenges of the US are coming back on the radar of investors, which ultimately could lead to this higher rates environment carrying over through the next coming years. Are you of this view as well, that this is the start of a secular trend playing out, or how do you decipher between kind of these cyclical and secular trends within this?
Well, this idea that the China and other central banks are going to be offloading their treasury holdings, that's true to some degree. All the headlines suggest, number one. Number two is, even though central banks and some sovereign wealth funds are divesting a little bit from treasuries, in particular they were doing this when they were trying to defend their own currencies, when the dollar was strengthening so much, they were selling dollars and buying their home currency. So it was actually reserve management was the reason they were doing it. And also, China and most central banks don't own a lot of market risk. They own short-term treasuries. They own 2-year treasuries, 1-year treasuries, T-bills. They don't own a lot of market risk. Who's buying? There's still a ton of investors from overseas. Foreign private investors are still net buyers of treasuries. It's a lot lower this year than it was a year ago. And those investors tend to buy longer duration, much more market risk than central banks do. So on the demand side, from the foreign perspective, it's more of a push than it really is divestiture. On a notional basis, foreigners haven't been buyers of long-term treasury debt for 7 years. So what? It's all been domestic. Now, part of that's because the Fed's bought everything in sight, right? So I admit that, and that's obviously changed a little bit. But when we talk about the supply side, so our forecast is for $2 trillion deficits basically for the next 3 years, which is, eyes pop out and everyone says, oh my God, who's going to buy all this stuff? Part of the reason that there's going to be all of this deficit is because of some of the things we mentioned before about Social Security. When you go back 20 years, the majority of the population wasn't retired. That's shifting now, today, in the last couple of years. You had Social Security, Medicare, and interest on the public debt 25 years ago was under a quarter of all federal spending. Today, it's almost half. So in the last 20 years, it's doubled. And so the reason that we have to issue all of this debt is basically to pay for the baby boomers retiring and for their health care. That's a large portion of the reason why we have to issue this debt. And the second is, quite frankly, I'm not going to call it fiscal mismanagement, but it's a choice that Congress has made to continue to spend a lot of money and not raise taxes.